official guide for how conservatives and Republicans should talk to young people. And the reason why I'm making this is because every day on social media, specifically Twitter, I see conservatives who are older, who are not, millennials or Gen Z, make common mistakes that alienate young people when they're talking to them. So these are the 3 points I have that I think will make it easier for conservatives and Republicans to talk to young people and get young people politically engaged and away from crazy socialism. So the first point is, when you're starting a conversation with young people and you're talking about voter registration, whatever, don't lead with how great America used to be. Don't talk about the fact that, we had all this wonderfulness and then socialism came and it destroyed it. Because there's an idea amongst young people, particularly my generation, that when you're saying that, what you're really saying is it was so great when there was racial segregation and it was so great when there were all these things that kept people apart. It's not a unifying message, and it alienates young people right off the bat because we automatically go to the racism point because it's what we're taught in our classrooms. Second of all, when you're talking about student debt or just college in general, conservatives tend to make this mistake over and over again. They say it's young people's fault for having this much student debt, that you didn't have to take on this debt, that it's really your responsibility and no one else's responsibility. They also say, well, when I was young, I worked really hard and I was able to pay it off. The thing is, in our society right now, if you don't go to college, you're kind of judged in school, and it's pushed so prevalently that not going to college is sort of seen as not being as smart, not being as important, not being able to hold your own. So by opening with that, by saying it's your fault that you're in debt, what you're really saying is, I don't understand you whatsoever. I come from a different generation and I'm not really going to pay attention to your problems, and I'm really not going to work to solve them with you. Instead, I'm just going to talk at you. And third of all, and this is really important, conservatives tend to talk to young people as if none of their ideas are valid whatsoever. And when I mean this, I don't mean it in a negative way, but I think that when we're talking about specifically climate change, young people are talking about how it's going to impact them for the rest of their lives. They're talking about how this is going to hurt them and their future kids and their future kids, and how millions of people are going to die. That's what's going on in their head. So when conservatives are talking about climate change or issues that will affect young people down the road, like the economy, you have to link it into how it's going to personally affect them now. For instance, you have to talk about what happened in France with Macron and the gas tax. You have to talk about the fact that if one aspect of your society is taxed, the rest of your society will suffer. That's a thing not a lot of young people understand, because that type of critical thinking isn't taught in schools. So you have to link everything together. You can't just talk about immigration. You have to talk about how immigration will drive down wages of people who didn't go to college, who might be less skilled. You have to play up the emotional part, or else young people are just going to sort of shut you down. And when I'm giving this advice, I'm not giving it because I feel like, conservatives have ill will toward young people. I just feel like the left so much understands how to make young people listen and how to get like a reciprocal relationship with them. And I want conservatives to have that, because going into 2020, you see all these major actions by young celebrities like Justin Bieber and Ariana Grande, and people basically who young people look up to. You see them mobilizing young people, and I don't see that effort within the conservative movement in the Republican Party. So if Republicans and conservatives can just take one or two or even all the things I've said and apply them, I think they would see a real turnaround. And I'm calling it the official guide for how conservatives and Republicans should talk to young people, because I've never seen someone else do this, and I do think it has to be sort of a guide. Young conservatives have to say, don't talk down to us about having too much student debt. Don't talk down to us about being worried about climate change, because if conservatives like you and I are worried about immigration and we see it as our number one issue, then we should understand that young people view climate change the exact same way, and we have to present actual arguments. Finally, this is one really important point that I don't think people realize. We have all the arguments and all the data that we need to defeat leftist ideals. We don't have to just scream at them. We don't have to sit there with our little microphone and feel so proud of ourselves at a college speaking tour and talk at someone and say, well, you're wrong because of all these things. We can present the real scientific data just by dissecting, for instance, the Paris Climate Accord, just by saying, do you realize that all the countries that were classified as industrialized were given less restrictions? We can act like that. We can present real arguments. We can back up what we believe emotionally and morally and spiritually with data. We don't have to bow down to their kind of crazy level of emotion. So thanks, guys, and please share.